All right, welcome everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Grow Your Path to Wellness. We hope that you've been tuning in every week. We've had an amazing wellness advocate on each and every week. Episodes are released on Sundays after 5 p.m. Eastern. Last week we talked to Amanda Kostura about EFT, which is also the emotional freedom technique, tapping, all about how you can decrease your stress response, and who doesn't need that where we are in the world right now.
Yes.
But this week we are going to be talking to our very own Kelsi Amerine about how she kind of plays at home and works from home and balances the two. So we're really looking forward to that one today.
So yeah, hi everyone. It's me again. You all see me every week. But yeah, I was excited to, at first I was nervous, but now I'm more excited to kind of be on the guest side of things and touch on just like some very broad topics, but topics that I get a ton of questions about, from whether it's clients, whether it's people outside of the field, and even people within our field. So just kind of boundaries and things I do for self-care, and also staying authentic along the way.
Yeah. And honestly, I feel like we could almost make a series out of this, because
that would be great. I'm down for that.
You don't know what you don't know. All right, Kelsi, so our listeners, if they've listened since the beginning, they have your background and education and all that, but if someone's just tuning in today, can you kind of give us a brief little intro?
Sure. So straight on through, I think in the very beginning in an episode, I was very, I kind of knew I was drawn to, social work. Maybe didn't know exactly what it was called, but along the way I had some really great advisors and whatnot. So I started out straight through in social work, clinical social work, and I did my associates first in human services, and then my bachelor's in social work. I worked for a year in between those at a between graduate school and my undergrad program. I worked with kiddos and at a community mental health agency that's pretty close actually to my house, which if other people have been listening, nothing's close to my house. So I worked there for about a year and a half, and then I left there to do grad school because I wasn't feeling completely fulfilled in that, and I knew that, my end game was to do grad school and eventually private practice, but we'll get there in a minute, guys. So I took a full year off from working, and I did a very accelerated master's program and got my master's of science in social work with specialization in mental health. And after that, I worked at a community mental health agency where I did both of my internships at. So, and then I felt some high burnout and amongst some other things, but I learned a lot from there. I kind of figured out what was my ideal populations, what ones did I feel like I, couldn't give them what they needed, and just a lot of experience from there. So I was there a little over about 2.5 years. So yeah, just a little bit of a background. And there I got a little bit more of experience of like a wide variety of populations. So that was helpful too.
Okay. So you recently made this, some might call insane decision, to leave a full-time benefited job and hop on out into self-pay, private practice in a very rural area in Ohio. And you just dove for it. A lot of people kind of dip their toes in. They start seeing people part-time. You were just like, I'm out, let's go.
The part-time thing was just it wasn't a realistic arrangement at the time. So I just was like, and in the middle of a pandemic, no, but like backup job. Like, luckily I've always been smart with money, so I was fine. It wasn't like crazy, but it still was terrifying because anybody that knows me, I am like a planner. I like to, if it's possible, I like to know it's coming, or is there things that I can do? And I just kind of flew blind into it because I could tell that the way that I was feeling in the community mental health role was not sustainable for me. I'm not saying anything, negatively about it. It was great. I got so much good experience from it, but it just was not for me long term. So I guess I said, well, if not now, when? And luckily I had your support.
I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but how did you know it wasn't sustainable? Because I think that level of mindfulness and insight is really hard. I think a lot of people really try to like, no, this is what I went to school for. This has to be it. I'll make it work. It must be me. That's the problem, right?
Yes. And I remember too, like, at the end of my undergrad, like after I finished that internship, I was like, this is where I want to be. I can see myself staying here, you know, for the duration of my career. And because I was like, man, it feels kind of crazy to say that. But at the time, you know, it encompassed everything that I was really interested in. But I think the pandemic did play a role in that to a degree. But I could tell the burnout was what I could tell. And us as therapists, we know what that looks like, but it's different when you have to like flip it around and look at yourself and you're like, what is this that I am? And I couldn't even put it into words. Like, what is this that I'm feeling? Like I could tell specific emotions. I could tell like my body just felt horrible. Like, and then when we switched completely to all telehealth and with the structure of me being like the expectations of community mental health, of being back to back to back, like no downtime. I had 1 hour out of a 10-hour day that I wasn't sitting like this behind a computer, not moving. I really figured out too. I learned a lot about how my environment and my surroundings impact me all day long, because it was one thing I spoke up, you know, to my supervisor at the time about, because going straight to telehealth completely and then being back to back, I noticed my mood. I was just so irritable with like so many people, even if I tried my hardest to like keep that from happening. I got to where I dreaded like going to work, not necessarily my work, but like I didn't feel like I had any separation. I didn't have any boundaries, and just every day felt the same. And I could just physically and emotionally tell that I could not keep doing it.
Thanks. I wanted you to kind of share that because I think regardless of profession,
oh yeah,
people try to pursue and stick with it. And I think it's important to recognize that. Okay, so you kind of mentioned there was no boundaries. So how, not no boundaries, but like boundaries between work, home, telehealth, right? Not ethical boundaries. But how did you, since you kind of went into private practice, how did you flip that for yourself and take more control?
Yes, absolutely. So like I said earlier, it may not be like a boundary, but the big thing where I noticed like I was so impacted by, you know, my surroundings, and my office was just this little tan brown box. I didn't have any windows. Like I had brought in like a little grow light and so that I could keep some plants beside me on my desk, because we'll get to more about that about myself in a minute. But I need that connection with the outside, and I didn't even feel like I could get that, you know, in my entire 10-hour day. Like even though I had like a 1 hour lunch break, we still, when you work in community mental health and such diverse populations, you know, I couldn't really niche like my client, you know, populations I worked with. So I had a very wide variety. I was always on the phone. If I wasn't in sessions, I can feel my body like reacting as we're talking about it. Like it's crazy.
I appreciate that so much. And if you don't mind explaining why that's important.
Oh, it's so important, because us using that mindfulness, like I could tell just by talking about it, I can tell it puts me back in that place of whenever I was in it all day, every day. Like heart a little bit, I'm not like fully on like heart racing, but at the time, you know, I felt I had to go to the chiropractor even more often because I would hold so much tension in my neck and my shoulders. My heart would race. My stomach would always be kind of like unsettled, not nauseous, but I was always feeling like that kind of, I gotta go. It's like a sense of urgency all day, every day. And I did not have any connection with any nature or just fresh air, or time for my brain to just be. So in private practice, it was a big shift, and I had to pay attention to my own, like what we call the limiting beliefs of, just because I'm not in a client session every hour of my entire day, that doesn't mean that I'm not a good therapist, or I'm not, my
Productive
worth
or achieving.
Yes. So I could take more control of my environment in private practice. So my office that I found and I leased is super cool. So like in my caseload, I mean, I'm almost full already in my private practice caseload, and it's been like not even 4 months yet. So that's one thing that I could probably do a whole other, I'm sure Amanda and I both could do a whole other or series or episode on the perks of private practice. But I was terrified of, self-pay, no insurance in my area. So I had to kind of put the stress aside. Like we said, I did it scared, and I had more control over my surroundings. I had more control of my schedule. The clients that I took on under me, I had more of a say about that. Like, because of community mental health, like they would, if it's not a good fit, I always got respected. If I said, hey, I don't know if, it's the best fit for me to work with this person, but you do feel that pressure more to say, we don't have anybody else to see this person because everybody's so full. But in private practice, I definitely felt more freedom to say, I don't think we're a good fit, but here's some referrals. Wow, I can follow up with you and all of that stuff. So more freedom of my schedule. And
when you said that made something come to mind for me. It's like a doctor, right? Like if you had like a pediatrician and someone was just trying to refer like a 21 or 22-year-old, they're like, could I?
Right.
Yeah, but it's not my specialty. And they probably wouldn't take them. But when you're in that, and it's not just where you were, I was in community mental health, a lot of us, there's such a need, such an urgent need, high risk population, higher levels of more intense mental health, right? More severe mental health. And so you feel very pressured. And then there's almost this shame and guilt and in yourself if you don't take them, or you take them and you don't have progress, so I'm sure even that for you being in private practice is more fulfilling. And
so much. Yes. I can go on and on about it, but it was one of the best things that I ever did for myself, and I have a good support system. And Amanda, you've been great at kind of guiding along the way, and so I'm glad that I just did it scared.
And I'll say, even for me, like, you said you were smart with finances. I couldn't discount the fact that my partner, like if my partner didn't say, hey, I can handle the bills while we do this.
Oh my gosh,
and you don't need to bring any income in.
He knew, because like, we've been together so many years, and he was like, he always could see it in me every day. He was like, you're not happy. Like, we're fine. Just go ahead and make a change if you want to. And it was myself that was like, oh, maybe a little bit longer. No, I don't think I'm ready. And then I came to a place to where I just fit, like I said, holistically, I felt horrible. Like, I was just like, felt myself wanting to isolate from everybody. And that was even before wintertime. Anybody who knows me also knows I'm I'm cold-blooded, I always say. So like, if I would have stayed going into wintertime too, like, like I feel it all as we speak in my body. And I'm like, nope, I'm not there anymore. We're good.
I know this isn't about that, but I have to keep bringing it up because our bodies are so smart, but they're silly too. And they can get really dysregulated and rewired the wrong way. And so what Kelsi's body is trying to do is say, oh my gosh, that was scary. Let's not go back there. Oh my gosh, there's a fire. Yeah. And what she just did is, oh, I feel that in my chest. That's a reminder of what was going on then. I'm not there anymore. I'm okay. I'm safe, which we could go on and on forever. But
so often. We teach our clients how to do that. And and I do it with myself probably almost every day, still.
Because otherwise, everything now in private practice is a fire, and you build that right back up, right?
Yes. Like, I definitely don't want to let that, carry over into what this new change that I've made, because I can already tell the huge difference for myself.
Okay, so you're in your home office and you have windows, and I know you have windows in your new office, so you can see nature. Tell me more about how you incorporate nature into your life, into your practice. How does it benefit clients?
Absolutely. So nature, sunshine, plants, anything that's green and fresh. It doesn't even have to necessarily be warm. That's a bonus. But I strongly believe that, I mean, us as humans were, you know, biologically, like, basically wired to be connected, you know, with nature. Like, the whole, I can get into different things about energy and whatnot, but it's just very grounding, and it has very powerful healing effects on our mind and our body. So, and I've always noticed that for myself, like growing up, we all have our own stuff, right? And if things got a little bit crazy, or if I needed, it was my, you know, my go-to, my healthy, like, okay, I need a minute. And so I've always lived out, you know, out in the middle of nowhere, and it's beautiful. So I would always just go outside. I would go and just sit by my creek, or I would take like a container, like a Tupperware container. My mom hated when I do it, but, and I would like catch wildlife out of the creek and just watch it. And, you know, I would do that for a little bit, and then I would go back to whatever it was that I was doing that was causing me stress. So I've done it since I was young. And now that I'm older, I can, like I said, I can just tell that I have to have that connection. And our society, I feel like, wires us to be pulled from that. It's supposed to be like, you know, special occasion, you know, to be in nature. It's like, oh, it's a reward for ourselves, you know, after a long day, a long week, I'll go on a hike. Or maybe it's only on like a vacation that somebody gets to connect with the larger, you know, nature or any kind of green space. And even if you live in the city, there's ways that you don't have to live out in the gorgeous, like a state park area like me. But
I was going to ask that because not everyone, especially lower income neighborhoods, you know, when you're more populated areas, sometimes you're in an apartment building and you don't have a lot of green space. So are there any recommendations? Like, not everyone can grab a Tupperware container and go down to the creek. What might you recommend for someone?
Right. I always recommend folks, like, if they've ever, you know, considered wanting to, you know, dabble in houseplants, or even if finances are a problem, you can get like a seed packet for, you know, between like 50 cents and $1. And I use nature in general as a mindfulness skill because it teaches us so much, whether it's patience, whether it's letting go of something that we know is not working, like the plant is not doing well. It might be time to, like, okay, I gotta let it go. Just having it around us can be really helpful. So for those that struggle with having access, I say just kind of maybe get creative, make your own access. If you are in a safe area that you can walk to, like a park, or sometimes just getting out and just walking in the air. And then you can use your senses while you're out there. And just, it's not necessarily like directly with green space, but you're using your senses and you are disconnecting from your normal day-to-day or electronics. It's a big thing that can disrupt us. And that's all we're doing right now. So just getting out into just fresh air in the bigger natural space and just listening, feeling, walking, or just, you know, kind of get into try houseplants, or starting a little herb garden in your kitchen. All of those, it sounds small, sounds like something that, like, I hear all the time. It doesn't feel like it would make that much of a difference. But when you do it, it's can make a really, really big difference for us.
I feel like it's similar to okay, it's not the same. I'm not saying it's the same, but as you were talking, it made me feel a similar response to when people have emotional support animals, and it gets you up, it gets you motivated. You have to take care of it, right? Oh, now it's not doing so well. You have to do something different. You have to put it in a different. Is that?
It sparks those things for us that very often can get lost, you know, not just like nurturing, but that sometimes motivation, you know, because like whenever I was struggling with how I was feeling, you know, that burnout, the stress, and all of that a while back before I made the change, I noticed myself leaning more whenever I was at home into my plants, or my, lovely green space that I have. But it's a very big thing that sparks us to say, all right, well, they need this and they need that. And then you get that little spark of if there's like new growth on one of them, or if there's something new you want to try. And it's very, affordable. Like you can get some plants. If you get a big plant, you can get a lot of baby plants off of that, and start in your house. I do that all the time. So it very much, it connects us with something a little bit bigger than us and outside of the news or the pandemic or other things that may just feel like too much for us and way out of our control.
And that's what I, when I do assessments or when I'm talking with people about like, faith, spirituality, anything bigger than you that helps change perspective and get you out of your unhelpful thinking or your depression or anxiety. You just said it. I mean, your plants could be your spirituality, right?
Yeah. Since private practice, I've just in general, as you know, like I've been, leaning more into that kind of stuff. I feel like just giving yourself that space to say like, okay, what I'm doing isn't working for me, but not judging that, because I did that for so long. I was like, but I should be able to do this. I should be doing that. Like there's something wrong with me that I am struggling in this way. Like I would use nature and all of that for my, boundaries outside of work and my own self-care and connection. But then I felt myself like still having to go back to a situation and it was just had me on like repeat. I would get myself kind of de-escalated, grounded, and then I would the Monday scaries. Yeah.
Constantly putting out fires.
Yeah.
Ugh. I love nature so much. I wish I was a better plant mom.
Listen, that's the whole purpose of doing it. You learn, and I could go on and on and on about it. And I think that because even in my private practice now, I didn't start offering it until it was, a little closer to colder weather. So I'm looking forward to next year, like in spring, and having a full spring and full summer. But I offer what we call ecotherapy sessions or walk and talk therapy. So I have a special consent form, and I can meet folks. We can walk from my office to a park that's right like 2 blocks away from my office, like a 10-minute walk. Or I can meet them at one of the state parks that are, local and not far from my office either. And just guiding them through how to disconnect and, be mindful. Because mindfulness is being present and like using our attention on purpose. So you go into it being very intentional with, this is what deserves my attention right now. This is where I'm going to be. And these are the things that I can use in order to get that out of this right now. Because like I said, society has us so wired to just go, to produce, to make sure you're doing this, make sure you have a full to-do list, make sure that you're being engaged and productive. And I always knew just my personality, that was a dangerous thing for me, because I'm very list oriented, I'm very organized, I'm very motivated otherwise. But when I was feeling like garbage, I felt that shame of I'm usually able to do this, or, so I'm glad.
I feel like that's such a dichotomy though. How do you, because I feel like for some people when they're feeling that way, right, or depression, whatever it is, to use energy to get a plant and take care of it or go out in nature might feel like an oxymoron, or might feel like I already don't have the energy, I'm already too overwhelmed, how could I possibly take on another thing?
Mm-hmm. Yes. And that's a very real thing. And the biggest thing I tell people is we need to incorporate more things in our life that we feel like refill us. So if your perspective of whatever, and sometimes it feels like we're forcing ourselves at first. If we get so down to a certain degree, it will feel like we're forcing ourselves at the beginning. And then we start to realize, oh, I had control over that. I put that in my life. And okay, I pushed myself a little bit, but I noticed it made me feel that way. And your brain's naturally going to want more of that. So then it becomes more of like an actual wellness practice, essentially, instead of
habit.
Yes. And then you're like, okay, I put that in my life and it fills me up. Those are the things that I work with my clients so often, because even in our professional practice, I think it's so important, to be authentic. So a lot of people, even down to my website, you can tell, like, my vibe. I'm such a millennial, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Plants and coffee and just that kind of
the aesthetic.
Yeah. Yes. And I said, we need to figure out what those things are for us that make us physically, that mindfulness of our body, what helps me feel genuine, like I feel kind of at peace. It doesn't even have to be happiness. It's just what makes me feel a little bit more content or at peace. And then I have control over that. I can do that whenever I need it instead of it having an expectation with it.
Oh, wait, I'm in control?
Yes.
That's something huge, right?
Control, man. Like, I think we all have those moments. So leaning on something that is consistent, that is bigger than us, and no expectations. We can just be and connect.
Okay, so now tell me, one of your clients decides to get a plant. You're like, this is a great one. It's hard to kill. 3 weeks later, they show you on their telehealth session, it's like dead. And they're like, I'm such a bad plant mom, Kelsi. I told you I couldn't do this. Does that happen to you?
Mm-hmm.
Or
it's happened to me myself.
Yeah. So how does someone that was already struggling with mental health and they tried this one thing and now they feel like they failed again? What do you recommend they do in that moment? Because now I just want to give up. I told you I can't keep plants alive.
I tell them to start over. That's it. Start new, start fresh. Doesn't even have to be starting over. It's just, it really, I think, teaches us to say, it's like that radical acceptance that I work on with clients so much of, we can keep adding that judgment, we can keep adding that shame, but we're not going to break that cycle of thought, feeling, emotion, those behavior chains. We're not going to break it with that. So it helps us give a safe space to practice saying, okay, I did everything that I could. And that's okay. So what's next?
Yeah.
Taking away judgment, I think, is really important. It's hard to do, and it takes practice. So sometimes, we can transition to something, okay, maybe a different type of plant, or maybe just trying a different way of connecting, to something in general. Like maybe we'll incorporate, I don't know, some kind of activity or other kind of mindfulness practice. And then, if we can if they feel like they need to build up a bit more of that self-esteem, self-worth first, get something else consistent in there and then go back to it. But
I know you have Sunny that you adore, your puppy. My thoughts as you said that, I'm like, maybe we try a fish. Like nature, right? So that could be pets if you're able to have a pet of some kind.
Right.
If not, maybe you can go get yourself a little beta fish or goldfish, right? And that could be something where you might feel like you're connected to nature and you're helping keep it motivated, keep it alive.
Yes, because when we are struggling, not just like we said with depression or with just our mood and where we're at in general, I feel like goes back to those expectations and saying, I should be doing this, I should be doing it perfectly, I should be growing and thriving. And I'm saying, if it's not, that's okay. Like we really start to take away our self-worth from productivity or how we're doing with things, physically, and just saying it is what it is, and then how do I move forward? What does moving forward look like?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it can be really helpful. And then they get to a place where we're just seeing, maybe long-term the plant dies, but along the way, that excitement of if they started it from new, and then you have like this whole process to look back on and say, Was the end result, what I wanted? No. But what did I get from that whole big picture? What can I take from that to move forward? And it can be a really motivating thing. But it helps us also like come to terms with things sometimes in a safe space and say, well, that didn't work out. And
that felt very much like almost like grief, right? Like, you just kind of have to, you don't have to get stuck on that loss and all the negative and what I coulda, shoulda, woulda.
Right.
And you also don't have to completely forget about it.
Mm-hmm.
But what you should do is say, what did I learn from that experience? And what am I going to carry forward with me from that relationship with that person or the time I spent with that plant?
Yep.
Or that fish or whatever it was.
Absolutely. I have a fish too. We just got him a new tank yesterday. It's so fun. I have like all of the things, I guess. I don't know.
It's necessities here. Okay. I could literally talk to you forever about all these things. And we have guests scheduled pretty much every week. 2020 schedule's still getting going, but if for some reason at any point we can't fill a spot, maybe Kelsi and I will just pop in and talk about these fun things back and forth. Okay, Kelsi. Any last minute things you want to leave our listeners with, our viewers, as far as that mindfulness, nature?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I can give people, a couple tangible, I always say like to bear with me because some of these exercises at first seem like, I hear all the time, I don't know if that'll make a difference. I was like, well, are you open to trying it? And they'll say, yeah. I'm like, all right, that's all I ask, but outside, so I'll have a couple of those in a minute, but just, I'm really big on figuring out what parts of your life do you feel like either are running together or you feel like are just taking from you emotionally, physically, and then, kind of lay those out and say, what can my boundaries look like? Because my own boundaries between my own work, even in private practice, are unique to me. And how can I set up some boundaries for myself? And then also lean into things that only refill me, only things that fill me up, because I feel like those things are kind of missing today. But the pandemic, I think, can be a positive in a way of having us lean into ourselves a little bit more right now and say, what are some things that I don't necessarily want to go back to in the new normal, whenever that comes and whatever that looks like. Separating those different areas of our life can be really helpful. So a couple exercises, we call them like mindfulness and grounding exercises. So I think I mentioned one, like if you're out walking, just using your 5 senses, like on a walk or a hike. And I help people just saying, like, as you're out walking, what are 5 things that I can see? What are 4 things that I can hear? What are, 3 things that I can smell? And just walk through them. If you go through all of them, do it again. We don't have to just do it one time. And then I like to have people check in with yourself, how you're feeling going into the hike, kind of saying, what's my mood like? How am I physically feeling? Maybe rank it, on like the 0 to 10 scale or something like that. And then after the hike or walk, after that experience, do that same check-in with yourself and re-rank. Because a lot of times when we do that, it shows that difference. And it can show us what activities do fill us back up or what activities are we like, no, it's not for me. And that's okay. Removing the judgment is important. And then the other one that I like to teach my clients, and I use it myself on the days where I think, like Amanda said, you feel like you're always putting out fires. And a lot of times that's not necessarily reality. It's just a cycle of thinking and feeling that started for me. At some point in that day, something triggered that for me. So pick up anything. It's nice if you can go to a plant, but or cups, anything. I don't care. and literally act like you've never seen it before. Like it's
I'm gonna go pick up a cat when we get off here and just be like, what is this creature?
Yes, and I said, okay, just think your mind will try to wander to like maybe your to-do list or to just something else. Maybe as you're looking, you're like, oh, I forgot to pick up that laundry or whatever. All you have to do is shift your attention back to whatever the thing was, and then describe it to yourself and be present in that moment with that object and learn everything about it. And then
we did a go ahead. And then what?
And then I like to do the ranking before and after if you think about it, because it can really show us, oh, I do, feel a bit more relaxed. Oh, my breathing has slowed down a little bit. I could go more in depth about, specific rankings and specific tools to check in with your body, but we'll leave that for another day. But I always recommend.
Yeah, I definitely think it's important to see, like, did that give me a dopamine hit? No. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Did that calm me down? No? Okay, right? And you just, all right, I tried, now let's move on to the next thing without the judgment, like you said. And something that came to mind for me is like something I tell my clients when their minds wander, right? Like you're trying to be mindful and you're like, oh, I have to do that report tomorrow. And you're like, I don't know what training it was in or where I learned it, but just labeling almost, if you feel the need to address that, like, oh, I'm future planning again, back to the plan. Oh, I'm stuck in the past again, back to the plan.
Yep.
I'm worrying about the future again, back to the plan, right? So it's almost like a car driving by, like, oh, that car was red. It went by, not, oh God, it was rusty and it sounded so loud. And oh my God, it smelled terrible with all those fumes. And the car was just red and it drove by.
Yes, I call it, I give when I'm building this mindfulness skill, because we use it, you can use it everywhere, right? Like I was in a drive-thru and I had somebody honking because the drive-thru line wasn't moving fast enough. And before, like, you could have a whole train of thought take off with that, and then you see somebody, get all worked up, and that
honk back,
radical
yell at them.
And it's like, okay, no, I'm just gonna sit here. This is what has my attention. This music, this song, this, I don't care. It's just, and then you're accepting that that doesn't have to take over my whole train of thought.
Doesn't have to rattle me.
Yes.
I'm in control.
Yes. I give people an exercise. It's called just noting. And it's like labeling. You're noting thoughts. And I did a really good mindfulness training, like a multi-day thing. And they described it, thought processes or trains of thought, as like a waterfall. You can either be sitting underneath of it and it just smashing over top of you and just or the goal of mindfulness is not to stop the thoughts, but just to stand behind the waterfall and watch them
rather than drown in them.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I'm stealing that. I love it so much.
Oh, great. I use it all the time.
Why have you not shared this analogy with me before?
Oh, we love our analogies. Okay?
And then the last thing I wanted to say, like, it just came to mind. If you're in a space where you have literally like 0.2 areas of green space, walk outside, take your shoes off, put your feet in the tiny square of grass that you have in front of your apartment building.
Yep.
Right? Yep. Like that gets the mindfulness, that gets the grounding. You start to feel what it feels like.
The earth has like electric energy and it connects to the bottom of our feet, and it can totally, it's like a resetting and healing effect.
Mm-hmm. And even if you can't do that outside barefoot, if you notice yourself feeling a little off, put your feet on the ground and feel them planted.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Kelsi, we'll be back again. I mean, obviously we'll be back every week talking to other people, but we'll have to have you on again to talk about more things. And maybe once you can get back out in nature in the spring, you'll have more to share on
I could do like just ecotherapy maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for being here. Any other thoughts you want to share where our listeners can find you? We can always link that too.
Sure. I mean, I partner with Carve Your Own Path, and then I have my own practice website, and then I'm getting into TikTok now. So my TikTok is GG Psychotherapy, and my practice website is guidanceandgrowthpsychotherapy.com.
Thank you. And I think you have a Facebook page too, right?
Yeah. You can search me. It's just my handle, like they have you do like a handle, but it's just Guidance and Growth. And you can find me on there too.
We will link those in the episode notes today. Thanks for being here. Next week, Kelsi and I are going to talk to one of my good friends, Heather. It's been such a beautiful journey to watch her, but she's now in her bachelor's of social work program. And it's going to be like such a good, like, happy little reminder of what it was like to be young and eager to save the world, and just like what motivates someone to go into that field. Because I think a lot of the people we talk to are like already there. It's like, oh, what made you? Okay, that was it. Now I'm here and this is what I want to talk about. But she's going to talk about like what motivated you to go for this, and what were your life experiences, and what do you hope to. So I'm so excited about it.
It'd be exciting to talk to her. Like, she's going through that process in the pandemic, and we didn't have that during our program. So
I know, it's so interesting. All right, so as always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I think that's it. I'm running out of words for the rest of the day. We like feedback, so please give us feedback. If there's a certain topic you want to talk about, let us know. If you're a wellness advocate in the community, if you're a professional or whatever you do that's wellness related, reach out to us and we will get you scheduled to talk.
Yes.
All right, guys. See you next week. Thanks, Kelsi, again.
No problem. Thank you.